Today we are going to discuss types of sampling techniques. There are 5 types of sampling techniques. The first one is random sampling, simple random sampling. The second one is systematic random sampling technique. Third one is convenience sampling technique. Fourth one is cluster random sampling technique. And fifth one is stratified random sampling technique. Other than convenience, systematic is also random, cluster is also random, and stratified is also random. So we don't pick and choose in these kinds of sampling techniques. Of course, random is simple random sampling is also random sampling. So first of all, random sampling technique is it's just like drawing names from a hat. Everybody in the population has equal chance of being chosen into the sample. So if we have a class full of 40 students, put everybody's name in a hat, all 40 students, and draw 5 names from the hat. That would be my sample of 5, sample of size 5. So everybody in the class had equal chance of being chosen. This kind of technique is difficult to use or difficult to do because it requires a complete list of every single member of population, which is often harder to obtain. So next kind of sampling technique is systematic sampling. This is easier to do than random sampling. In systematic sampling, we follow a system. So you as a researcher decide that you want to include every 5th member, every 10th member, every 3rd member, every 15th member as you're collecting the data. So in systematic sampling, you take every kth element. The k is decided by you. It can be every 2nd person, every 10th person, every 5th car, every 50th box of cereal. So it can be any kth member. Okay. Next one is convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is very easy to do, but it's not a good technique. It's not a good technique to use. It's the worst technique. In convenience sampling, you only reach out to the people that are easy to get to. For example, if I have a class full of 40 students and I want to estimate the average age of students in class, but it's easy for me to reach out to first 5 students in the first row, and I ask those 5 students and I find their average age and use that as the average age of entire students in the entire class. That would be not correct. It was easy for me to do because those students were close to me, easy for me to reach out to, but it's not a good way of estimation. I didn't include the other 40 students, other 35, 40 students sitting in the back seats. So that is convenience sampling. It's not a good technique and highly, highly discouraged. Do not use convenience sampling. Next one, number 4, is cluster sampling technique. Cluster random sampling technique. Cluster random sampling technique is when entire population is divided into clusters. For example, think about it like counties. California is divided into counties, and then from there, those counties would be called clusters or blocks. The clusters are randomly selected and each element in the selected clusters are used. So if we have, let's say, 10 clusters, we can randomly select 2 clusters and survey everybody in those 2 clusters. For example, out of California's all the counties, let's say the Alameda County and Yuba County are selected. So those 2 counties will be, everybody in these 2 counties will be surveyed. That would be cluster technique of sampling. Next, number 5, we have stratified sampling technique. Stratified sampling, in this technique, we divide the population into stratas. It could be based on age, it could be based on some special characteristics, it could be based on gender, and then some members from each strata are taken to survey. For example, if we have, let's say we have a high school and there's freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So those will be our stratas, and we can take some members from freshman group, some from sophomore group, some from junior group, some from senior group. And we create our sample by taking some members from each of the groups. That would be stratified sampling technique. Or we can divide entire population into males and females, and we take 50 males and 50 females to sample. That would be also stratified sampling technique. Stratified and cluster can be confusing, so here's the difference. In stratified, we divide entire population into stratas. It could be based on gender, could be based on some other characteristic of it, and we take some members of each strata. In cluster, we divide entire population into clusters, and we randomly select some clusters to survey or sample, and everybody in those clusters is surveyed. Everybody in those clusters, in the selected clusters, is going to be a member of our sample. Let's see some problems and see if we can handle these. Pause for a minute, look at these problems, and give yourself a minute or two to decide which sampling technique is each of these is following which sampling technique. So first one is simple random, next one is cluster random, and stratified random, convenience sampling, systematic random. Other than convenience, all other ones are random because you're not intentionally choosing a group over the other. So pause for 2-3 minutes, work out these, and write the answers on a piece of paper. Come back and check with me in about 2 minutes. First problem, part A. Every fifth person boarding a plane is searched thoroughly. Okay, every fifth person. That means we are following a system, and that would be systematic random technique. Systematic random. Okay. Systematic random sampling. Systematic random sampling technique. Part B, at a local community college, 5 math classes are randomly selected out of 20. So there's 20 total, 5 are randomly selected, and all of the students from those classes are interviewed. So 20 total, 5 are randomly selected. Every single student in those 5 classes is going to be interviewed. That would be cluster random sampling. Cluster random sampling. Part C, a researcher randomly selects and interviews 50 males and 50 female teachers. Okay, this would be stratified random sampling. Why stratified? Because your population is divided into males and females, and then some males and some females are going to form your sample. Part D, a researcher for an airplane interviews all of the passengers on 5 randomly selected flights. Only 5 flights are randomly selected, and everybody on those flights is interviewed. So that is going to be cluster random sampling. Okay. I'm not writing sampling at the end of each, but you go ahead and do that. That's important. Cluster random sampling. Okay. Next one, we have part E. Based on 12,500 responses from 42,000 surveys sent to its alumni, a major university estimated the annual salary of its alumni was $92,500. And I should have put a dollar symbol here. So this would be convenience because they only reached out to the people, or they only included the people who responded back. This is not a good sample because they're missing out on the people who did not respond to the survey. They did not include those people. So this would be convenience sampling technique because they sent 42,000 surveys, only 12,500 responded, and they're surveying only people who willingly responded. Other people in the group are being left out. So that would be all for this video. So we discussed 5 kinds of sampling techniques in this video. The first one was simple random. Everybody gets a chance of getting selected. Systematic random, where we follow every kth member is selected. Cluster, where we divide population into clusters and randomly select some clusters to survey or sample. And then we had convenience, where we only reach out to the people who are easy to get to. And then we have stratified, where population is divided into stratas and some members of each strata are surveyed.